I'm ready to have my heart broken again. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Freaking frackin' football is back, thank God. Grossi, and today we are going to be breaking down and predicting every single game in the Week 1 slate. Before we get to that, I just want to send out a reminder that the Pick'em League that we've been doing for the past couple years is back up and running on ESPN. The link is in the description. So before kickoff on Thursday night, if you want to join, go right ahead. If you forget, you can still join later, that's fine. But it's just a fun way to compete against everyone in the community. I think we have over 4,000 people in there. Last time I checked, I think the only league that we were below were Cowboys fans, and the rest are like actual ESPN and NFL programs. So sign up if you would like. It's completely and totally free, and it's a great time. And so, for the first time in the 2023-2024 NFL season, let's get to it. First, we got the season premiere. Does anyone call it that? No. But we have the season premiere, the opening game. You got the Detroit Lions taking on the reigning, defending Super Bowl champs, the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is a big game for both teams. For the Chiefs, well, they get to continue to parade around the fact that they own the league and, just show off their Super Bowl trophies and banners. It's fine. But you know what, Chiefs fans? You deserve it. You went through a very long time of not being very good, and now this is your offseason.
This part of my life, this little part, is called happiness.
Unfortunately, big news coming out today when this is being recorded that Travis Kelce did injure his knee. They don't think it's significant, though his status for Thursday is in jeopardy. So that would be a major loss for the Chiefs, who are expecting guys like Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney to be able to kind of pick up the slack. Last year, of course, they didn't have Tyreek Hill. They had a hodgepodge of receivers like Juju Smith-Schuster in there as well, and they still won the Super Bowl. So it really doesn't matter for them. But for the Detroit Lions, good God, this is one of, if not the biggest game that they have had in the last, decade or so. The Lions showed that they were playoff contenders, just missing out on the playoffs last year. They beat the Packers in Lambeau, and there are a lot of expectations behind this Detroit Lions team. Now, of course, they have some issues with gambling. Guys like Jameson Williams aren't going to be around for 6 games, but the Lions, they have a good squad. Jared Goff had a really good season last year, and he looks to continue that. I know there's talks about a potential long-term deal, but I think Jared Goff is going to have to prove that he can be that franchise guy for the Lions. Meanwhile, they did get rid of Jamal Williams, which will always make me very sad, but they drafted Gibbs and they brought in David Montgomery. So that run game should not only be effective, but it should be nuanced as well. But overall, I think this is going to be a very competitive game. I think without Travis Kelce, if he doesn't play, that is a huge swing towards the Lions. And the way that I'm looking at this game is, for the Lions, they don't need to win this football game. They just need to be competitive. If they are competitive and they take this down to the wire, I think it's going to send a message to not only the rest of the league, but specifically to the NFC and the NFC North of, hey, we're going to be competing this year. And if they wind up winning, well, then, yeah, they're probably going to hoist a banner. But it's really difficult for me to bet against Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they are the best team in the NFL right now, so I am going to be going with the Kansas City Chiefs. And if the Lions win, oh boy, pandemonium. Then you got a really tough matchup here between two NFC South teams. You got the Carolina Panthers taking on the Atlanta Falcons. A lot of excitement for both of these squads. They're kind of in this weird rebuild, still going to be competing because they're in a bad conference and in a fairly bad division. But there's going to be a lot of publicity around this game because you're going to see Bryce Young take his first real NFL snaps in an actual game. The Panthers have had an interesting offseason in which they bring in a brand new head coach. They draft Bryce Young, number 1 overall. They bring in guys like Adam Thielen, and I just feel like this is going to be an efficient team. I think they could surprise some people. I think they're going to win at least 7 games, but a lot of that is going to be dependent on Bryce Young. And that offensive line does give me a lot of concern. Meanwhile, for the Falcons, you didn't really see a whole lot of Desmond Ridder in the preseason, and so I imagine Arthur Smith just has a play sheet of 50 run plays, and I imagine this is his reaction after giving it to the team.
It is brilliant American literature, and I don't care what anybody, it should be taught in schools.
But in all seriousness, they drafted Bijan Robinson, which was an interesting move. The Falcons fan base was kind of divided about this. They were like, hey, he could be a generational player, but he's also a running back. We also have running backs in Tyler Algier and Cordarrelle Patterson, who were effective last year. But on top of that, they did bring in guys like Jesse Bates to shore up that secondary a little more. And the Falcons are another team that in a weak division, I think they're going to be able to compete. And this is a really tough game to try and predict. I'm going to give the Falcons the slight edge because they have a little bit more experience at quarterback. Bryce Young coming in first game. I think maybe there's going to be some growing pains, though I think the Panthers would be happy if he grew. But the point being, I'm going to give the Falcons the win here, but this game could go either way. Then you got an AFC North matchup between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns. The Bengals, as I mentioned Jesse Bates before, they lost some key members of their secondary, though I think they'll be just fine with their defensive line. But the Bengals are in this kind of interesting place because this is probably one of the last years that they are going to be able to have all of their weapons under contract. Joe Burrow is due for a major payday. And so maybe there's a little bit of pressure on the Bengals, but I imagine they are going to be a very good football team. Meanwhile, the Browns, talk about pressure. If this doesn't work out for the Browns this season, it's going to be blow it all up time because it's all going to come down to one guy, and that is Deshaun Watson. And Deshaun Watson is in the midst of trying to convince everybody that he's good again.
Because I've worked really hard to change.
And the reason why this season is so pivotal is because after this year, his cap hit explodes. And we still don't know if Deshaun Watson is good like he was back in Houston. Talking about as a football player, not as a human being.
I was a piece of shit, though.
Used to be.
I said was!
And so there's a lot riding on Watson because they have a good team surrounding him. I mentioned Nick Chubb. They have Amari Cooper. They have the defense, though it doesn't look like Denzel Ward is going to be playing against the Bengals, which could hurt them. And so because of that unknown, I am going to pick the Bengals here. I think they're the better team, but it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of squad the Browns are this season. Following that, you have an AFC South matchup between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Indianapolis Colts. Well, these are two very different teams last year. As the Jaguars impressed a lot of people, they wound up winning the division, while the Colts, it was sad. The Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence in his second year and with an actual head coach that doesn't kick his players, really excelled. Especially at the end of the season, Trevor Lawrence was just on a different level. There are still some concerns, of course, with that defense and maybe the offensive line a little bit, but Travis Etienne, I think, was going to have a really good year in his sophomore season. Their wide receivers of Christian Kirk, Zay Jones did well last year. Evan Ingram had an amazing year and got a big contract for it. And of course, the addition of Calvin Ridley. This offense seems like it's ready to peak. Meanwhile, the Colts, well, Jim Irsay is on Twitter like this.
If I died tomorrow, no one would shed a tear. Load my freaking lard carcass into the mud. No coffin, please. Just wet mud. Bay.
But it has been a tumultuous offseason for the Colts. The Jonathan Taylor situation being at the center of all the controversy, in which they weren't going to trade Jonathan Taylor, then they allowed him to potentially get shopped, but then they wanted crazy things like Jalen Waddle, but then they put him on the PUP list, so he's not going to be playing for the first 4 weeks. But yeah, things are odd in Colts land. However, they have a brand new quarterback in Anthony Richardson, which just about everybody is super pumped for. Anthony Richardson has a ton of raw talent. The guy can sling the ball. He's incredibly athletic. He could run. And it's just going to be a matter of, is he going to get enough support on that squad to really be able to develop, because he's being tossed right into the fire. And I think with his athletic ability, he can make up for a lot of what's lacking with the Colts right now. Their O-line isn't what it used to be. Their defense isn't elite, and their run game, I don't even know right now. Their wide receivers, there's some issues. You have Michael Pittman, who you've been waiting to do something. Alec Pierce has some drop issues, but can be that home run guy. But overall, I'm curious to see how Anthony Richardson performs. I am going to pick the Jaguars here because I think they are the better team, and I imagine you're going to see those glitter kitties going meow. Following that, you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Minnesota Vikings. The Bucs, they don't have Tom Brady anymore. Baker Mayfield is behind center. for better or for worse. And I imagine the conversation between Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, and Todd Bowles went something like this.
We're slow learners, and we're not particularly good listeners. That'll be a huge problem.
We're also slow learners.
The Buccaneers are an interesting squad because I don't think a lot of people anticipate them being very good this year. I think they have some weapons still, of course, in Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, who there's some contractual issues there. But overall, their defense is still solid. It's their coaching that gives me pause. However, they're in a really, really weak division, so they might wind up surprising some people. Meanwhile, the Vikings, they won the NFC North last year. Ugh. They won a bunch of really, really close games. They went to the wild card and then got beat in the first round by the Giants.
Yay.
Their defense was really not great last year. They brought in Brian Flores, who I think is going to make that defense better, but they also lost guys like Zadarius Smith, though you probably wouldn't have been able to tell after halfway through the season last year. And their offense, they lost Dalvin Cook and Adam Thielen. Thielen being a bit older, I don't think that's a huge loss. They brought in Jordan Addison, though I think they will feel the loss of Dalvin Cook a little bit more, though I think that Madison is a good running back. The Vikings should be competitive this year, but this is likely to be the last season with Kirk Cousins in a purple uniform, unless he winds up going to the Ravens. But this is likely the last year for Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, and I really don't know what kind of team they're going to be. Like I said, I think they could win 7 games, they could win 11 games. It's going to come down to how good is that defense and is that offense struggling without some of the weapons that I already mentioned. I am going to pick the Vikings here because I do think they are the better team. It does not feel good to pick them. And so, Buccaneers, if you want to do me a solid, I wouldn't complain. Following that, you got another really interesting matchup. You got the Tennessee Titans taking on the New Orleans Saints. The Titans, oh boy. Last year, we don't have to talk about that, lost a whole bunch of games after you beat my team. So congrats for that. But they don't have Todd Downing anymore, which is fantastic. And I feel like Titans fans were really not anticipating a great season this year. They kind of soured on Ryan Tannehill. They brought in Malik Willis, who looks like he has improved from last season, but they also brought in Will Levis just in case. And that's a whole nother thing. But the acquisition of DeAndre Hopkins was huge for them because now it has given their season a little bit of hope. Their D-line should still be very, very good. Derrick Henry is still there. And I think they're going to be a competitive team in a not so great division. When it gets to the playoffs, if they make it there, that's a different story. And it just seems like the Titans find new and innovative ways to disappoint their fans every single week. So I imagine Titans fans at this point are just like this. Meanwhile, the Saints, questions about their head coach, Dennis Allen. Alvin Kamara suspended for 3 games, which is not as much as many people were predicting. And the Saints are pretty much slept on right now. They brought in Jamal Williams, and I love that signing. Michael Thomas, I refuse to say anything about him until I actually see him play for an entire season. Chris Olave was phenomenal last year and was in the running for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And the defense is pretty damn solid. So I think the New Orleans Saints are going to be a good football team this year. Are they going to be a great team? That one I don't know. But they are favorites to win the NFC South. I think they'll come out and perform pretty darn well against the Titans. I think this should be a really, really close game. I was going back and forth, but I am right now leaning towards the Saints with Derek Carr. And let's see if that partnership can get off on the right foot. Then, yet another tough matchup. You got the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The 49ers, as of recording this on Tuesday, ain't no sign of Nick Bosa yet. And I imagine Nick Bosa is wondering why the 49ers haven't paid him yet.
The economy is in shambles. Taking the close look at the marketplace right now. Dow Jones.
Yikes. Of course, they traded away Trey Lance to the Cowboys. Brock Purdy seems to be their guy. It seems like things are indicating he is going to be ready to go week 1. They have Sam Darnold just in case. And listen, they have so many skill players on there. Of course, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, who they're hoping can take that next step. And that defense is full of warriors, though their secondary, a little bit questionable. But the 49ers made it all the way to the NFC Championship game last year. Meanwhile, taking a look at the Steelers, they're an up-and-coming team. Their defense should be solid. Their offensive line looks to have been improved, and Najee Harris was just running into a wall last year trying to get something going, and it seems like maybe they'll have some lanes this year. Kenny Pickett looked good during the preseason, but it isn't the regular season. You have George Pickens, who looks absolutely incredible every single time the ball gets thrown his way, and I think the Steelers are a dark horse team this year and could surprise a lot of people. How much do I believe in them? Well, this is my upset of the week. I am going to pick the Pittsburgh Steelers to knock off the 49ers. I just think maybe there'll be some rust for the 49ers. On top of that, no Nick Bosa. If he doesn't play, that's definitely going to help. Also, this game is being played at home. Steelers fans are going to be insane. And so, yeah, let's see, Steelers. You going to Super Bowl? Then, oh God, you got the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Washington Commanders. Listen, if the Cardinals somehow win, I imagine that Coach Gannon is going to give just another inspiring speech like this one.
You know what's the most exciting thing about winning? It's when you win. I love that feeling.
Yeah, the Cardinals are the front runner to be the worst team in the league this year. Kyler Murray is not going to be playing week 1, and it just seems like this is a team that is going to be rebuilding. Of course, when Kyler Murray returns, they should be more competitive, but they have some major holes on their squad. Now, their previous GM did not do them any favors. It's like the Giants with Gettleman. They have to kind of usher out the old, looking at you, Isaiah Simmons, and bring in some new guys. Hell, they got the Texans draft pick to help with that. Meanwhile, the Commanders, an interesting team. Sam Howell coming in, there's a lot of promise behind him. Ron Rivera, don't know if he's going to be the long-term solution there as coach, but even though he's banged up, they got Scary Terry, they got Dotson, they got Curtis Samuel, so they have a nice little trio of wide receivers there. That defense, they're hoping can step up in a major way, and on another note, it's really exciting that the Commanders sold out their week 1 game. It just finally seems like the fans are going to start getting what they deserve from the Commanders, and I don't know if that's going to translate to on-field play, but the ownership, I mean, hell, it's a really low bar to clear. And so I'm going to pick the Commanders to get the win here. I'm curious to see how Sam Howell does. The Cardinals do have a shot just because we don't know about the Commanders, but yeah, I'm going to be picking against the Cardinals a lot this season. Then you got a battle between the Houston Texans and the Baltimore Ravens. The Texans, listen, you got hope now. The Texans have been in this weird limbo for a while. They had Deshaun Watson, and they didn't want to play for them anymore. They traded, they got a king's ransom for him, and then they drafted CJ Stroud. But then they decided to go up and get Will Anderson in back-to-back picks, and I love the aggressiveness of this. They got D'Amico Ryans, who I absolutely love as their head coach. They have their running back Pierce, who was great last season. They have some individual stars on that team that they can build a team around. It's just gonna probably take a little bit. Now, CJ Stroud didn't impress a whole lot in the preseason, but he's a rookie QB, and I imagine there are going to be some bumps and bruises. Extending Tunsil was definitely the right move. You just worry a little bit about the rest of that offensive line. Meanwhile, the Ravens, it's guns a-blazing. They got wide receivers now. They got Zay Flowers. They got OBJ. They are ready to go. Lamar Jackson is healthy. And hell, Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, here they are after 2 years of being injured.
I think we should just all take a moment and think about what a miracle it is that we got out of there.
And that we all became friends in the process and like kind of learned some shit about life.
But there's a lot of excitement in Baltimore. They could be a very, very good team. It just comes down to, can everyone stay healthy? I'm not entirely on the OBJ train just yet because he's older. He had a major injury. Let's see if he's going to be able to produce. But either way, a healthy Lamar Jackson with maybe some healthy running backs could be incredibly effective. They're in a tough division. They're in a tough conference. But overall, I'm going to pick the Ravens here to win against the upstart Texans, and it should give the Ravens some nice momentum heading into week 2. Then, the matchup that we've all been waiting for. You got the Green Bay mother-loving Packers taking on the Chicago Bears week 1. Oh, yes. The Packers. It's a new era. The love era. And I imagine this is Bears fans if we get a third Hall of Fame QB in a row. But the Packers, a lot of optimism, a lot of excitement, a lot of unknown. The Packers defense, is this finally going to be the year where they do well? Joe Barry, we're all counting on you. Meanwhile, in the offense, a lot of youth, a lot of inexperience, but a ton of potential. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs being the centerpieces of that offense. Of course, you also have a great run game with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. But the big question, of course, is going to be Jordan Love. What I really liked seeing was Jordan Love looking real damn good in the preseason, but most importantly, he had a ton of protection. You have a really young tight end group, a really young wide receiver group. Luke Musgrave is currently our tight end 1, but they've been utilizing him all over the field in camp and during preseason. And so, yeah, there's a ton of excitement. Meanwhile, for the Bears, there's also a ton of excitement. Not from me, but from Bears fans, because Bears fans have been talking a lot this offseason. They traded away the number 1 overall pick. They got a whole bunch of stuff, including DJ Moore, who I think is a game changer. Justin Fields coming into yet another season where hopefully Luke Getsy is going to be able to scheme for him like they were last year, and he was effective. I know that a lot of people are like, oh, Justin Fields can't throw. He can definitely run, and I think he can improve as a pocket passer. He just needs a pocket to do it in. I am a little worried if I was a Bears fan, which thank God I'm not, but that offensive line does give me some pause. Tevin Jenkins is injured, and you are rebuilding that defense. This is in Chicago. Both fan bases want this win so badly. And you know who I'm going to pick. It's the Green Bay mother-loving Packers. I think the pass rush of the Packers should be able to get after Justin Fields. On top of that, I think the offense is going to impress against a rebuilding defense. So let's see what happens. The Love-Fields rivalry begins, and I think Love is going to strike first. Following that, you got an AFC West battle between what is likely to be the bottom 2 teams in that division. You got the Vegas Raiders taking on the Denver Broncos. The Raiders, you had yourself an offseason. You brought in Jimmy Garoppolo. You just restructured him to give yourself some room. You brought back Josh Jacobs, thankfully. You got Devontae Adams still, and those are the positives. After that, I'm not so sure. On defense, you have Max Crosby and some really good young players, but I also hate Josh McDaniels. And it's not a personal thing. It's just I don't think he is a good head coach. On top of that, I think Jimmy G is kind of a stopgap QB. And I think they'll be relatively competitive this season because they do have Devontae Adams. They do have Josh Jacobs. But I don't think they're going to win a ton of games. Meanwhile, the Broncos, a lot of question marks with that team. They bring in Sean Payton. They're still rolling with Russell Wilson. And bringing in a trusted head coach, we'll see how much of a difference that makes. We saw how much of a difference it made in Jacksonville. We saw the difference it made with the Giants. And so it can definitely happen with the Broncos. I really like their defense, especially that secondary. The run game with Javonte Williams and Pirine should be good. I know there's injuries with their wide receivers, but maybe Cortland Sutton can step up. And so there's a lot on the line for both of these teams. More so, I would say, for the Broncos. I am going to pick the Broncos to get the W at home. I think that defense should be able to give Jimmy G some fits. And so Broncos fans, maybe you'll be able to ride again. And if not, I imagine this is what your fan base is going to look like after losing to the Raiders once again.
Oh, I'm fine. It's just that life is pointless and nothing matters, and I'm always tired.
Following that, you got the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the New England Patriots. And listen, the Eagle represents freedom. The Patriots are patriotic. So no matter what, America wins.
USA! 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 USA!
Okay.
But in all honesty, the Eagles are probably going to win this game. They did not lose as many free agents as I thought. Of course, they went to the Super Bowl last year. Jalen Hurts was incredible. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, absolute studs. The defense was really good, which only got better with Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. And yeah, the Eagles are going to be contenders this year and are likely going to go back to the Super Bowl in the NFC, or at least be favorites to. Meanwhile, the Patriots, I think, will be better this season. They brought back Bill O'Brien to help Mac Jones, who did not look great last year. But then again, you also had Matt Patricia back there. Nobody looked good. But I do think the Patriots defense will be very good. It's a Bill Belichick defense, so that is likely the case. They brought in Zeke Elliott, so we'll see a combo of Zeke and Stevenson in that backfield. I imagine they're going to be running the ball a lot. And hey, maybe we'll see Tyquan Thornton, who has so much speed, break out this season. But I do think the Eagles are going to be a little bit too much for the Patriots to overcome. And so because of that, Philly gets the win. Then, oh man, this is a game. You got the Miami Dolphins taking on the LA Chargers. The Dolphins, they took a big swing. They brought in Jalen Ramsey, who then got hurt almost immediately and is going to be out until like December. But the bigger signing, in my opinion, Vic Fangio. Really, really like that signing to come in and fix this Dolphins defense. And on top of that, hopefully Tua is healthy, because if Tua is healthy, that offense is going to click. You got to hope that Mike McDaniel decides to run a little bit more because they have the running backs to do so. But you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That offense is going to be disgustingly good if they have a quarterback. But hell, they almost won a playoff game with Skylar Thompson. Meanwhile, the Chargers, oh boy, Chargers fans, you're coming in with, yet again, big expectations for a season.
No question about it. I am ready to get hurt again.
I hope you don't get hurt. But you got rid of Joe Lombardi. You brought in Kellen Moore, which I think will make a major difference. Justin Herbert getting a big old contract, well-deserved. You still have Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnson, Mike Williams. That offense, I think, is ready to go. Slater will be ready to rock. And that offense, I think, can be one of the best. The defense, you have hopes. I think that they have some really good guys on that squad, but there are some question marks. And it just seems like every single time we overhype the Chargers, they disappoint us. And so this was a really, really tough game to try and predict. If this was in Miami, I'd be giving the Dolphins the win, but I am going to pick the Chargers here just because there might be some rust with Tua heading into week 1 after not playing for a bit. So I'm going to give the Bolts the win, but this is a game that I can easily see the Dolphins winning too. Then you got an NFC West battle between the LA Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. The Rams, well, this is Matt Stafford getting picked up from training camp.
Hi, Mom.
Make any friends?
Not really.
Just can't get to these damn kids. Matt Stafford, some interesting stories coming out of Rams camp that he can't really relate with any of the younger players. Cooper Kupp, unfortunately, messed up his hamstring, so they're kind of seeing how that goes. Their offensive line, I don't know if that's a huge improvement. Their defense, they still have Aaron Donald. They lost Jalen Ramsey. And listen, it doesn't matter for the Rams. They won a Super Bowl. They're happy. And they have a first-round pick finally next year. So this year, I don't know how good they're going to be. I don't know how healthy Matthew Stafford is. And so there are concerns. Meanwhile, the Seahawks surprised just about everybody last season. Geno Smith having a really good year. Kenneth Walker breaking out. They brought in Charbonnet as well to make sure that they have some healthy running backs. Their wide receiver core of now JSN, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf should be one of the best in the NFL. Their O-line should be solid as well. And then taking a look at their defense, they have Tariq Woolen, who's one of the best young stars in the NFL today. And if he can repeat what he did last year, maybe Defensive Player of the Year is in his future. But yeah, I see the Seahawks winning this game. I think they're overall just the better team. The Rams, they're down some weapons. I don't know how good they're going to be this year. And so Seattle, at home, yeah, they get the dub. Then on Sunday Night Football, because of freaking course it's them, you got the Dallas Cowboys taking on the New York Giants. Cowboys fans, they're like this before Sunday Night Football.
Do what you need to do today. I'm not nervous.
Every single year, it's their year. They brought in Brandon Cooks, which I really like. They brought in Stephon Gilmore to make that secondary a bit better. And listen, the Cowboys are going to be a good team this year. They got rid of Zeke. Tony Pollard's going to be the featured back. Michael Gallup returning. CeeDee Lamb played really, really well last year. And I have no doubt they'll be competing for a division title and they'll be in the postseason. Can they get over the hump and make it back to the Super Bowl? That's the big question. You worry about Mike McCarthy a little bit. That offensive line, it's not what it used to be. And again, you have to still go through Philadelphia. Meanwhile, the Giants, they impressed last year. Brian Daboll was phenomenal. He took a squad that people thought weren't going to win 5 games, and they made it all the way to the postseason, won a playoff game, and then got eliminated in the divisional round. Now, they went out and got pass catchers like Darren Waller, who I think, if healthy, can make a major impact. And hopefully you see guys like Thibodeau on the defense improve as we go along. I will say Daniel Jones getting an extension before Saquon Barkley is a little bit of a head scratcher, but given the running back market, it does make a little bit of sense. Saquon Barkley, if he can be like he was last year, the Giants are going to win football games. Daniel Jones, you got to hope those TD numbers go up a lot. Those interception numbers were pretty low last year, but you got to start scoring more points. Overall, I think this should be a pretty good game. It's being played in New Jersey, but I do see the Cowboys getting the win here. I think they are the better overall team, and I just don't want to watch this again on Sunday Night Football. Can we please just get another game every year? And then finally, on Monday Night Football, you got the Buffalo Bills taking on the New Jersey Jets. The Bills, are they going all the way this time? You gotta hope. Josh Allen, healthy, yay. Von Miller, not healthy, boo, on the PUP list. But they brought in guys like Dalton Kincaid, but as I've said in many episodes, I wouldn't expect him to have a huge season right off the bat because it's difficult to transition from college to the pros as a tight end. But I do have some hope for the Bills because that secondary is healthy finally. On top of that, if they decide to actually run the ball, they have guys like James Cook who can do just that. The Bills should be a damn good squad this year. Meanwhile, the Jets, arguably the most improved team this offseason, they brought in a bunch of guys, most importantly being Aaron frickin' Rodgers. The Jets almost made the playoffs last year with Mike White and Zach Wilson, so they can do it with Aaron Rodgers. Their defense, phenomenal. Sauce Gardner, Defensive Rookie of the Year. Their offense has some major weapons like Garrett Wilson, Offensive Rookie of the Year. They brought in Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard to give some familiarity to Rodgers, and it looks like Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook are going to be playing week 1, so they should have an effective run game. The biggest question mark, of course, is the offensive line. And I do think that how bad they are is a little bit overblown, but I think it definitely is a cause for concern with a 40-year-old QB. I think this will potentially go down to the wire. The Jets, I think, are going to be really good this year, but maybe they struggle out of the gate like Brady did with the Buccaneers from a couple years back. And so I'm actually going to pick the Bills to get the week 1 victory. But then again, Aaron Rodgers does love Monday Night Football.
Monday Night Football! Monday night!
And so these are my predictions as you see. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Join the Pick'em League and you can make your own picks. Let me know. You know how to find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or TomGrossiComedy, all social media, see down below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go. Oh my God, I'm dying.